The lights feel hotter than usual that night, like the studio itself knows something combustible is about to happen. The applause sign flashes, the band swells, and somewhere between the laughter and the rhythm of the cameras gliding across polished floors, a storm is already gathering. Before we step into it, before the first word is spoken, before the first smile tightens into something sharper, make sure you subscribe to Fame&Frame right now. Like this video. Drop your thoughts in the comments as you watch. Because tonight, you're not just seeing an interview. You're stepping into a confrontation that will ripple far beyond this stage. The curtains part. At the desk sits Stephen Colbert, composed, razor-sharp, the practiced calm of a man who has danced with presidents and movie stars alike. He smiles at the audience, but there's an edge beneath it, an anticipation. Across from him, walking into the light with measured steps, is James Talarico, a Texas lawmaker in a Navy suit, a former teacher, a man who speaks softly, but never vaguely. They shake hands. Polite, professional, charged. The crowd settles. The band fades. The city outside hums, unaware that inside Studio 57, something is about to fracture. Colbert leans forward, fingers interlocked. You've described these as strange days in the Texas Legislature. Talarico smiles, but it doesn't quite reach his eyes. Strange is one word for it. The audience laughs lightly, unsure whether to treat it as a punchline or a warning. Colbert tilts his head. You've been outspoken about what you call the rise of Christian nationalism in Texas politics. The air shifts. The phrase lands like a stone dropped into still water. Christian nationalism. Some clap. Some stiffen. A few glance sideways. Talarico doesn't rush. He inhales slowly, like someone preparing to step into cold water. I'm a Christian, he says evenly. I take my faith seriously. But when faith becomes a weapon in the hands of power, that's when it stops looking like religion and starts looking like control. The audience murmurs. Not applause. Not yet. Just recognition that this isn't small talk. Colbert's smile fades into focus. And you believe that's happening? I don't believe it, Talarico replies quietly. I see it. Silence. The kind of silence that makes the cameras seem louder. He speaks of bills written with scripture in the margins. Of debates where the language of democracy is replaced with the language of divine mandate. Of colleagues who talk less about policy and more about prophecy. He doesn't accuse. He describes. And somehow that's more unsettling. Colbert presses. Some would say you're exaggerating. That this is just politics as usual. Talarico's jaw tightens, barely perceptible. Politics as usual doesn't tell children that one religion has a monopoly on patriotism. The audience exhales sharply. Some clap now, but not everyone. The tension is no longer theoretical. It's in the room. Colbert shifts in his chair. You're a Democrat in Texas. That's already a battlefield. Why take this on? A flicker crosses Talarico's face, fatigue maybe. Or memory. Because I've seen what happens when good people stay quiet. His voice lowers. The room leans in. In the legislature, I've heard colleagues say this country was founded to privilege one faith over all others. I've watched laws pass that blur the line between church and state until you can't see where one ends and the other begins. He pauses. And I've seen the fear in the eyes of families who don't fit that mold. The studio feels smaller now. Tighter. Colbert's expression shifts again. Not comedic, not combative. Curious. You're accusing your colleagues of undermining democracy. I'm warning. Talarico corrects gently. There it is. A warning. The applause sign flickers again, but the audience doesn't need it this time. They clap, some hesitantly, some fiercely. But beneath the applause, there's another sound. Resistance. You can feel it in the way a few people sit with folded arms. In the way social media feeds are already being typed out in real time. In the way producers exchange glances just off camera. Colbert leans back, steepling his fingers. So what happens next? Talarico looks straight into the camera now. Straight at you. That depends on whether we're brave enough to call this what it is. The room stills. And what is it? Colbert asks. Talarico opens his mouth to answer. And the screen cuts to commercial. The applause crashes in, but it feels forced, almost frantic, as if the studio is trying to drown out what almost happened. Backstage, producers whisper. Phones buzz. A clip, just 15 seconds of that unfinished answer, is already spreading online. When the show returns, the energy is different. Sharper, like a blade drawn halfway from its sheath. Colbert doesn't waste time. Before the break, you were about to define what you see happening in Texas. Talarico nods slowly. I was. The audience is quieter now. No nervous laughter. This is about power, he continues. When politicians claim God is on their side, disagreement becomes heresy. Opposition becomes sin. A ripple of gasps. Colbert interjects carefully. But faith has always played a role in American politics. Yes, Talarico agrees. Faith inspires people to serve, to fight injustice, to expand rights. He leans forward. But when faith is used to restrict rights, to decide who counts and who doesn't, that's not inspiration. That's domination. The word hangs heavy. Domination. Colbert studies him. You're walking a fine line. I know. And you're not afraid? A beat. Talarico smiles faintly. I'm a public school teacher turned lawmaker in Texas. Fear and I are well acquainted. The audience laughs, but it's tense laughter. Appreciative, but aware. Colbert shifts gears. Critics will say you're attacking Christianity. I'm defending it, Talarico replies instantly. That answer lands harder than anything so far. He continues, voice steady but charged. Christian nationalism isn't Christianity. It's a political ideology that wraps itself in the cross. And when we confuse the two, we damage both democracy and faith. Applause louder now. Sustained. But the cameras catch something else. A producer signaling from the wings. Time. Colbert glances down at his notes, then back up. If this continues, if what you're describing grows, where does it lead? Talarico doesn't hesitate this time. It leads to a country where citizenship is measured by creed. The words hit like a dropped glass. Somewhere in the audience, someone audibly whispers, "Wow." Colbert's voice softens. That's a serious charge. It's a serious moment. The tension is palpable now. Not theatrical. Real. Colbert leans forward one last time. And what are you willing to risk to stop it? The question slices through the studio. Talarico holds his gaze. Everything that matters. The crowd erupts, applause, cheers, a few scattered boos. It's no longer unified. It's divided. Just like the country he's describing. And as the segment ends, the handshake they exchange is firmer. Longer. But their eyes tell a different story. This wasn't just an interview. It was a line drawn. Is watching. By morning, the clip is everywhere. News panels replay it. Pundits dissect every syllable. Hashtags trend before sunrise. Supporters call him courageous. Critics call him reckless. The phrase Christian nationalism surges across timelines like a lightning strike. In Texas, colleagues issue statements. Some dismiss him. Others avoid the cameras altogether. In church pews and coffee shops, in classrooms and state offices, people argue over what they saw. Was it bravery? Or provocation? The studio lights have cooled, but the heat hasn't. Colbert addresses it the next night with a raised eyebrow and a half-smile, acknowledging the storm without fully stepping back into it. Talarico returns to Austin, where the halls of the legislature feel narrower than before. Conversations hush when he passes. Some clap him on the back. Others won't meet his eyes. But the clip keeps playing. On phones. On televisions. On laptops in late-night dorm rooms. A warning. Or a challenge. And now you're part of it. Because this wasn't just about two men under bright lights. It was about the tension between belief and power. Between faith and freedom. Between silence and speech. So what do you think? Was this a necessary confrontation? Or a dangerous escalation? Did he cross a line? Or expose one? Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. Share this video with someone who needs to see it. And subscribe to Fame&Frame for more stories where power meets pressure, and the spotlight reveals more than anyone expected. Because sometimes the most explosive moments don't happen in back rooms. They happen live. And the world. The applause from part one hasn't really faded. It just mutates. By the time the cameras cut back in, the studio feels tighter, like the walls have leaned in to listen. The band plays a lighter riff, but it can't soften what's sitting between the desk and the guest chair. Stephen Colbert adjusts his glasses, the faintest signal that he's shifting gears. Across from him, James Talarico sits upright, hands loosely folded, eyes steady. Calm on the surface. But there's something coiled underneath. Colbert breaks the silence first. You said before the break that this leads to citizenship being measured by creed. His tone is careful now. Not joking. Not needling. Measured. That's a heavy claim. Talarico nods once. It is. And you're saying that's already happening? A pause. long enough that you can hear someone cough in the third row. It's beginning, Talarico says. Not in headlines. Not in speeches. In small votes. In committee rooms most people never see. The audience shifts in their seats. The air feels denser. Colbert leans forward, elbows on the desk. Give me an example. No hesitation this time. When lawmakers argue that public schools should privilege one religious worldview. When they suggest that being truly American means adhering to one faith tradition. When they draft bills that carve out rights for some and restrict them for others, based on theology. A murmur spreads. Colbert's eyes narrow slightly. But supporters of those bills would say they're protecting values. Talarico's jaw tightens. Whose values? The question hangs there, sharp, clean. Colbert doesn't blink. The majority's. And what happens to the minority? Talarico fires back quietly. The audience reacts, an audible wave of sound. Not loud, but charged. You can feel the temperature rise. Colbert tilts his head. America's always wrestled with majority rule versus minority rights. Yes, Talarico says. That's why we built a constitution, to protect people from the tyranny of the majority. The word tyranny lands hard. A few scattered claps. A few uneasy shifts. Colbert's voice lowers. Are you accusing your colleagues of tyranny? Talarico doesn't look away. I'm saying when the state begins enforcing a specific interpretation of faith, it stops being freedom. There's a silence that stretches so thin it almost snaps. In the control room, producers exchange glances. The director whispers something into a headset. Social media clips are already being cut in real time. Colbert changes posture. Less host, more interrogator. Some people watching at home will say you're painting with a broad brush. That you're demonizing fellow Christians. Talarico inhales slowly. You can see the weight of that accusation. I grew up in church, he says softly. My faith taught me humility. It taught me to love my neighbor. It taught me that coercion isn't conversion. He leans forward now, mirroring Colbert's intensity. But when politicians claim their policy agenda is divinely mandated, they shut down debate. Because how do you argue with someone who says God is on their side? The audience goes very, very still. Colbert's lips press together. Are you saying they're using religion as a shield? I'm saying they're using it as armor, Talarico replies. A beat. And sometimes as a sword. That does it. The crowd erupts, applause, sharp and divided. Some stand. Some stay seated, arms crossed tighter than before. Colbert raises a hand, half to quiet the room, half to steady the moment. You realize, he says carefully, that this interview will be seen in Texas. A faint smile flickers across Talarico's face. I hope it is. There's a ripple of laughter, but it's edged with nerves. Colbert pivots again. Let's talk about the phrase itself, Christian nationalism. Critics argue it's a label meant to scare people. Talarico's eyes sharpen. Words matter. If a movement says America was founded as an explicitly Christian nation and should be governed as such, that's nationalism fused with religion. Colbert counters, but the founders referenced God. They also barred religious tests for office. Talarico shoots back instantly. The audience reacts with a low, impressed hum. Colbert pauses, recalibrating. So what's the endgame here? Talarico doesn't blink. Power consolidated under the banner of righteousness. The room feels electric now. Colbert's voice drops almost to a whisper. And you think democracy survives that? Another pause. I think democracy survives when people are willing to confront it. The two men lock eyes. It's no longer host and guest. It's challenge and response. Colbert shifts back, but there's no humor in his expression now. You're a minority voice in your state legislature. Does this make your job harder? Yes. A simple answer. Yes, he repeats quieter. Colleagues avoid eye contact. Invitations disappear. Bills stall in committee. The audience listens intently. But, he continues, I didn't run for office to be comfortable. The line hits like a drumbeat. Colbert studies him. Do you worry about backlash? A flicker passes across Talarico's face, something raw. I've already received it. The studio stills. Threats. Colbert asks carefully. Anger. Emails. Calls. Talarico nods. Some of it deeply personal. A hush falls over the audience. Colbert's tone softens. And you keep going. Yes. Why? Talarico looks out at the crowd, then back into the camera, into the lens that beams straight into living rooms across the country. Because silence would be easier. And easier isn't always right. The applause this time is sustained. Louder, but fractured, cheers colliding with a few audible boos. Colbert lets it ride for a moment. Then he leans in again. Let me push you one step further. The words hang ominously. You're not just critiquing policy. You're challenging an identity, how some people see themselves as Americans. Talarico nods slowly. That's true. And that's dangerous territory. Yes, Talarico agrees. No flinch. No retreat. Colbert's eyes search his face. So I'll ask you directly, are you prepared for what comes next? The tension spikes again. The band members glance toward each other. A producer presses a hand to her headset. Talarico exhales. What comes next, he says carefully, is bigger than me. A beat. It's about whether we define patriotism by creed or by commitment to liberty. The audience breaks into applause again, but it's chaotic now. A few people shout. One voice yells something indistinct from the back. Security shifts subtly along the aisle. Colbert raises his voice slightly over the noise. And if the majority in your state rejects that framing? Talarico's gaze hardens. Then we keep fighting. The word fighting slices through the room. Colbert seizes on it. Fighting how? Through votes. Through courts. Through conversations like this. He gestures around them. This is part of it. The realization settles in. This isn't just television. It's battleground narrative. Colbert's tone sharpens one last time. You understand some will say you're inflaming division. Talarico's reply is almost immediate. Division already exists. Pretending it doesn't won't heal it. A long silence follows. The kind that feels unscripted. Colbert glances toward the camera, then back at his guest. And if you're wrong? The question lands heavy. If you're wrong. Talarico's expression doesn't waver. Then I'll have erred on the side of defending freedom. The audience explodes, this time unmistakably louder than before. A wave of applause that shakes the studio. But over the roar, something else is happening. Phones light up in the crowd. Notifications surge. Clips are already trending. The director's voice crackles through the control room. We're blowing up online. Colbert smiles faintly, but it's tight. Controlled. Well, he says, that's one way to spend a Thursday night. Nervous laughter ripples through the audience. But as the segment nears its end, Colbert delivers one final question, quieter than the rest. Is there any room for reconciliation? The room goes still again. Talarico considers. Yes, he says at last. How? When we remember that faith is strongest when it's chosen freely, not imposed. A softer applause follows. But the tension hasn't dissipated. It's transformed. Colbert extends his hand again. They shake, firm, deliberate. The cameras pull back. The applause sign flashes wildly. And as the theme music swells, a single thought lingers heavier than the lights above them. This wasn't just a conversation. It was a line drawn in front of millions. And somewhere in the halls of the Texas Capitol, people are already preparing their response. The credits begin to roll. But in Austin, the real confrontation is just beginning. By sunrise, the clip is everywhere. Not just circulating, detonating. The handshake. The word tyranny. The phrase citizenship measured by creed. 15-second fragments looped again and again, stripped of context, sharpened into ammunition. On one screen, Stephen Colbert leans forward, eyes narrowed in focus. On another, James Talarico holds the silence just a second too long before saying, when politicians claim God is on their side, disagreement becomes heresy. The algorithm does the rest. Phones buzz in church parking lots, in faculty lounges, in the marbled corridors of the Texas Capitol. Staffers huddle around glowing screens. Communications directors draft statements before the coffee finishes brewing. In Austin, the building feels colder than usual. Talarico walks through the metal detectors with the same measured pace as always, but today the air shifts when he enters a room. Conversations taper. Eyes follow. A few nod in quiet solidarity. Others look through him, as if acknowledging him might validate what he said. In a corner office, a television plays the segment on mute. Closed captions crawl across the bottom of the screen like a legal brief for the entire nation to examine. A senior lawmaker points at the line. Power consolidated under the banner of righteousness. His jaw tightens. He crossed a line. Across the hall, a younger staffer whispers, or he finally drew one. Back in New York, the late-night monologue that follows the next evening is different. Colbert doesn't joke first. He references the storm. Carefully. Clips flash behind him, Headlines, hashtags, split screens of pundits arguing in boxes like digital gladiators. He smiles, but it's restrained. It seems, he says, we touched a nerve. The audience laughs, but it's a knowing laugh, because the nerve is still exposed. Cable news panels fracture the moment into talking points. One commentator calls Talarico courageous. Another calls him reckless. A third insists the phrase Christian nationalism is weaponized rhetoric. A fourth says it's overdue truth. The split screen becomes a metaphor for the country itself. Meanwhile, Talarico's office phone doesn't stop ringing. Some callers thank him, voices trembling with relief. Finally, someone said it. Others spit anger into the receiver, accusing him of betrayal, of attacking faith, of disrespecting tradition. His staff moves methodically, logging messages, filtering threats from fury. In a quiet moment between meetings, he sits alone at his desk. The Capitol dome casts a faint shadow across the window behind him. His phone lights up again, another notification. The clip has passed 10 million views. He watches a few seconds of it himself. Not the applause, not the handshake, the silence before he answered. He studies his own face in that pause, as if trying to remember what he felt in that exact second. Was it fear, resolve, or the awareness that once certain words are spoken, they cannot be unspoken? In churches across Texas, sermons shift tone. Some pastors denounce the segment as divisive. Others quote parts of it from the pulpit, urging congregants to separate faith from political dominance. Congregations murmur. Conversations spill into parking lots under bright Sunday skies. Students at the University of Texas debated over coffee, their laptops open to opposing editorials. One says, he's defending pluralism. Another fires back, he's attacking identity. The debate no longer belongs to a studio. It belongs to everyone. Late at night, social media turns the confrontation into myth. Edits add dramatic music. Reaction videos rack up views. A slowed-down clip of Talarico saying, "I'm defending it," overlays images of stained glass windows and waving flags. Another edit isolates Colbert's final question, "Is there any room for reconciliation?" and fades to black before the answer. The cliffhanger becomes cultural currency. Back inside the Texas Legislature, a closed-door meeting convenes. Voices rise. He's misrepresenting us. He's not wrong. He's fueling national attention. We were already under national attention. The argument spirals. Not about theology. Not even about policy. About narrative. About who controls it. Outside, reporters wait by the steps, microphones poised like periscopes. When Talarico emerges, cameras flash. Questions fly. Do you regret the phrasing? Are you worried about re-election? Has leadership confronted you? He pauses, not unlike the pause on Colbert's stage. I stand by what I said, he answers calmly. The statement travels faster than the segment did. In Washington, a congressional aide forwards the clip to a colleague with one line attached. Watch this. In suburban living rooms, families argue over dinner. Faith belongs in public life. Not like that. You're exaggerating. You're ignoring it. The confrontation has seeped into the marrow of ordinary evenings. Colbert, for his part, senses the aftershock. In a later interview, he references the moment again, this time more reflective. He describes the studio's silence, the palpable shift in energy. He doesn't endorse. He doesn't condemn. He acknowledges. And that acknowledgement keeps the clip alive. Talarico receives invitations now, some supportive, some adversarial. Universities. Panels. Radio shows eager to amplify or dismantle him. He chooses carefully, because he knows something most viral figures learn too late. The second act is harder than the first. One afternoon, alone in his office again, he reads a letter from a high school student. Thank you. It begins. I'm not Christian, and sometimes I feel invisible in this state. He sets the letter down slowly. Outside his window, the Texas sky stretches wide and indifferent. Inside, the weight of representation presses heavier than any viral fame. Across the aisle in the legislature, a colleague stops him in the hallway. You didn't have to say it like that. Talarico meets his eyes. Would you have listened if I hadn't? The colleague doesn't answer. And that silence feels eerily familiar. Weeks pass, but the clip refuses to die. It resurfaces every time a new bill is introduced. Every time a sermon goes viral. Every time someone says the phrase Christian nationalism on cable news. It becomes shorthand. It becomes symbol. It becomes warning. Late one evening, scrolling through the endless stream of commentary, Talarico stops at a split-screen edit, his face in Colbert's frozen mid-gaze. The caption reads, "The moment the conversation changed." He exhales,